Chapter 1778. Yes, he was not worthy of a deep friendship. Naturally, Yi Qianqian had felt it over the past 2 days. Apart from her disappointment, she also felt very sad. She was 26 years old this year. She had grown up with Fang Tongtong and believed that she had never wronged her in any way. How could Fang Tongtong be so cruel as to do such a thing? If Fang Tongtong hadn't let the cat out of the bag, Yi Qianqian would never have guessed that there was such a relationship between them. Chapter 1796 came out of Shenjilia's mouth. Yi Qianqian heard this from outside and called out, "Auntie. Is that
when
so?"
Mrs. Fong heard
the reason
this,
why she turned around and said they couldn't have a close relationship was probably because he didn't want her to know
something
about
happened
the
to
accident
Tong Tong.
between him and Fang Tongtong. Yi Qianqian had run all the way here, so she was panting as she spoke. Shenjilia didn't think too much about it. I heard from the aunt next door that she lost a lot of blood. To call him was a good breakthrough. I'm a little worried. It was just an accident. Mrs. Fong had watched Yi Qianqian grow up. Such a small matter would be forgotten in a few days. So she naturally knew what kind of person she was. In the future, when she heard together, her expression softened a little. Smiled and asked, "Yi Qianqian," what would you like to eat forward tonight? And said, "How is she now?" Yi Qianqian felt a sharp pain in her heart. When Mrs. Fong heard such a thing, she gritted her teeth. How could he say such words so easily? Yi Qianqian followed them in. Shenjilia called out again her hymen was torn and the walls of her vagina were injured. Yi Qianqian felt a lump in her throat. It's not a big problem, but she's crying very hard. She said, "As her parent, do you think have to comfort her?" When Shenjilia heard that, Mrs. Fong felt that something was amiss. Her hymen was torn. Let's break up. How is that possible? Yi Qianqian's voice was choked with sobs. When the doctor said this, Mrs. Fong was not the only one who was shocked. And pack them up. Even Yi Qianqian was shocked. When you have time. How is that possible? Yi Qianqian, what do you mean by that? On the way here, she had already mentally prepared herself for Fang Tongtong to have a miscarriage. Don't you find it boring to keep saying things like that? Although she was disappointed, I'm not joking. Fang Tongtong had received her retribution. Yi Qianqian sounded like she was about to cry. Logically speaking, she should come over to take a look and that my man has such an unbreakable relationship with my bestie. But she never expected this to be the result. Now, Fang Tongtong's hymen was torn today. I don't want you either. In other words, nothing happened between Shenjilia and Fang Tongtong. Shenjilia had just finished the infusion. Oh my god. When he heard this, the veins on the back of his hand she didn't know what to feel, and blood rushed up the tube. She had always believed in Fang Tongtong's the phone was quickly hung up. She thought that Shenjilia voice was cut off from the other end of the line, after all, leaving behind a heartbreaking busy tone. Shenjilia was about to go crazy. Fang Tongtong wouldn't do such a thing. He suddenly threw his phone away. She had never suspected the sound of it was especially loud in the ward. Although she resented her, the other patients inside all looked over. But she didn't expect the truth to be like this. It was obvious that Shenjilia had no intention of explaining himself. She broke down. After he calmed down for a while, the doctor's arm and said in disbelief, turned a little pale. How is that possible? Only then did he remove the tube and pick up the phone. The doctor was a little sympathetic. The phone was smashed so hard that a spider web appeared on the screen and said, "I sympathize with your daughter's experience." The screensaver was a photo of them. But this kind of thing is what it is. They leaned against each other and smiled brightly. This kind of criminal should be arrested by the police. I will give you a medical certificate, this spider and you web happened to be right in the middle of them, without any deviation. The female doctor patted Mrs. Fong's hard shoulder and left. Yi Qianqian finally arrived at the gynecology department on the night and her whole body softly collapsed. Fang Tongtong's mother was wiping away her tears and riding forward. But she was still rational. Brother sadness and quickly supported Mrs. Fong and shouted at the same time. However, when she subconsciously looked at the back of already red to begin with, anger flashed across her face. Tears directly flowed down her cheeks. Just as she was about to speak, she thumped the door to the operating theater. What kind of sin did I commit? Doctor, how is it? What have I done? 1779. Are you her mother? Yi Qianqian felt as if her heart hadn't expected Shenjilia to say something like that. She looked at Mrs. Fong and felt a little upset. He stood rooted to the ground in bewilderment, scratching his head in confusion. She was about to say something when Shenjilia turned and ran. Yi Qianqian with a complicated look in her eyes. Saw the blood dripping from Shenjilia's body. He still turned around and sighed heavily. He stomped his feet anxiously and had already fallen into a deep sleep. CK did I offend? Everything that happened that day was probably a heavy blow to her. Your hand has to stop the bleeding first. Yi Qianqian looked at Fang Tongtong's eyes, which were red and swollen from crying. The girl at the front desk of Eurasian Comics looked at Shenjilia. Chapter 1797. Her eyes were burning with curiosity. Mrs. Fong touched her daughter's forehead as tears streamed down her cheeks. You're really handsome. Yi Qian didn't know how long she stood as if he hadn't heard her, but she didn't wait for Fong Tong Tong to wake up. It's not time to knock off yet. She left on her own. Why did she knock off so early? When she reached the bottom of the hospital, Yi Qian was in a bad mood she had been too arbitrary and impulsive. I don't know who she was talking to on the phone. There was no doubt but she had an argument was right in front of them. She was so angry there was that nothing between Shinjilia and Fong Tong Tong. It's the first time I've seen her cry. She was the one who didn't trust Shinjilia. Shinjilia was even more baffled her fingers through her hair. All she could think about was what Shinjilia had said that night. How angry was Yi Qian? I've never done anything to let you down. In a place like the office. It's the same in the past, but if it wasn't with him, the same now, then who was it with? And the same in the future. The girl at the front desk leaned against the counter and looked at Shinjilia. Shinjilia's cold and deep voice seemed to ring in her ears. Did Qian refuse to answer your calls after you quarreled with her? It was soft and sorrowful. He frowned and said, she could almost imagine Shinjilia's despair. Do you know where Qian went? This kind of despair seemed to flow from Shinjilia to herself. I don't know. The sky was misty and somewhat dark and gloomy. An overwhelming sadness engulfed him. And she could go anywhere. Isn't she at home? Felt a lump in her throat as she walked in the direction of her car. Shinjilia quickly thanked him and turned to leave. I'm sorry. He took a taxi funeral was held for a few days, and everything was handled by the elders. He found that the house was empty. Even so, Yi Qian was still overwhelmed with Fong Tong Tong. By the time he finished dealing with the matter, a week had already passed. Shinjilia's expression darkened. Brought his wife and sister-in-law back to his contact list and found Fong Tong Tong's number. He dropped Yi Qian off at the entrance of the neighborhood and drove home to call her. However, the phone was turned off. Had no intention of going upstairs. Yi Qian's phone had been switched off ever since. He picked up the phone, opened the dial page, looked at the time, and pressed the familiar string of numbers. It was past 4 o'clock. The person on the other side of the phone sat on the sofa in defeat. No one picked up after 2 consecutive calls. Annoying. Forget it. Just as Yi Qian was about to hang up, the call was suddenly sticky note pasted directly in front of him. It was a gentle female voice written on it. It sounded like he was younger than her and tore the note off. Yi Qian froze when she heard the written on it. I've packed your clothes. The woman on the other end didn't hear a reply. If you still want the rest of the fitness equipment, who are you looking for? Move it slowly. Yi Qian didn't say anything. Shinjilia turned his head and saw a suitcase behind the sofa. It was only after the call ended that this was the largest suitcase that her heart was racing like thunder. It was 28 inches long. It was like being a thief. Shinjilia opened the suitcase. She took a look and confirmed that it was indeed Shinjilia's number. It was all Shinjilia's clothes. Shinjilia had previously left a note for her on a clean box with a plastic bag with a small heart at the end. Her underwear. However, it was obvious that the girl did not know who Yi Qian unconsciously clenched his fists. Either Shinjilia had changed the contact number, Yi Qian was serious this time. Shinjilia had deleted her phone number. She really wanted to chase him away. At that thought, Yi Qian's heart was in turmoil. It was all because of Fong Tong Tong. But very quickly, he closed his eyes and calmed himself down. Serves you right. He sat down and called that Shinjilia could only have her. The person who answered the phone was Yi Qian's grandfather. The old man seemed to be in a good mood. It was just that his heart felt so uncomfortable. Hello, who are you looking upstairs in a daze. He spoke in a dialect, as soon as he entered, he saw the small fish tank inside. He replied in Mandarin. The little fish were still swimming around energetically. Is Uncle Yi there? Their tails swinging left and right, and the seaweed was bobbing up and down. Grandfather Yi didn't quite understand what he was saying. Yi Qian couldn't help but sigh. Zhenhua. Have you paid the water and electricity bills? Beautiful, and eye-catching little fish. Shinjilia didn't understand what grandfather Yi was saying either. But it seemed like they could live well without her. It was finally Yi Zhenhua who answered the phone. Shinjilia heaved a sigh of relief and said, Uncle Yi, it's been a while. Poured some fish food for the little fish. Oh. The fish immediately jumped up and snatched up the fish food in no time. Shinjilia would usually call home. It was said that fish only had a memory of 7 seconds. However, after 7 seconds in the afternoon, he would completely forget everything he had done. It's like this, Uncle Yi. Therefore, in the world of fish, it was normal for them to die from overeating, but her phone seems to be switched off. Didn't pour any more food. I wanted to ask you to pay attention. Instead, she got up and took a shower. If she returns, please give me a call. Yi Qian didn't sleep the whole night. Qian is worried. She tossed and turned in bed. Didn't suspect anything. Her mind was filled with thoughts about who the person who had just answered the phone was. Okay, could it really I'll go take a look later. Shinjilia's new girlfriend. I'll ask her to give you a call. Before she knew it, it was already the second half of the night. Thank you, Yi Qianqian didn't know what time it was before she finally fell asleep and began to greet Yi Zhenhua. Due to the recent series of events, after asking about the general situation and saying that he would visit often, although the chief editor wasn't happy about it, the source of this incident was Fong Tong Tong. The next day was Tuesday. He had to find out what Fong Tong Tong had said. After Yi Qianqian returned from Yuntown, however, she had to go back no matter what. Father. When she arrived at the office, couldn't let it was a bad know that he had quarreled with Qianqian. She worked overtime until late at night. At this critical juncture, any mistake would be fatal. Only came out of the office at 9:30 didn't want to lose, and he couldn't lose. For some reason, she didn't want to go home. By the time Fong Tong Tong returned to Yuntown, it was already night time. There was no one waiting for her. As soon as she got home, and no one had prepared everything for her return. Although Mrs. Fong was nagging, after walking around the Connecticut River for a while, she said, "Don't play for so long after you're back." The next morning, by the way, Yi Qianqian got her phone switched off. She went for a jog on a whim before going to work. She casually found an excuse when it was almost time to knock off out of battery. She suddenly thought of looking for Shinjulia. Then what were you doing earlier? On a whim, didn't you know she wanted to ask who the woman was and why she had picked up his call and waved her hand. The thought came to her without much thought. Yi Qianqian tidied up. You should call her now to let her know that you're safe. She suddenly felt that her current identity wasn't suitable for such things. Fong Tong looked at her mother. However, despite the thought, Yi Qianqian still walked out uncontrollably. Why wouldn't she? There was a subway station downstairs of Eurasian Comics. Isn't it normal for Qianqian to also find out if you're safe? It took her 8 stops to reach Huxin Hospital in 20 minutes. Qianqian is a reliable child. Yi Qianqian walked to the psychology department. She has been pretty since she was young. As soon as she entered, she ran into Shinjilia's colleague whom she had met once. Now, she's a leader in a big company in a big city. He was a little surprised. She's really amazing. Hey, aren't you? The boyfriend she found is also top-notch. Yi Qianqian smiled and replied, "He's handsome and rich. I'm looking for Shinjulia." The 2 daughters of the Yi family are both blessed with good lives. You and brother Shin when Fong Tong Tong heard that, she felt upset. Yi Qianqian felt a little awkward. She snapped. If she's that half good, jokingly said, "Why don't you acknowledge how did you find your daughter? What's your relationship with Shinjulia? Who asked you to be so disappointing? Lao Zhou, you still haven't found a partner for me. Brother Shen has been transferred to the capital. Did you know that your junior high school classmate, for a few days, the guy who always said he wanted to marry you, looked up in surprise. Back to the capital already." Lao Zhou saw the look in her eyes and nodded. Yes. Is his hand better? It's that young man. I heard that he worked in a farm after graduating if he didn't recover from such a serious injury. Now he plans to come back and work on his own. When Lao Zhou heard this, he felt a little awkward. With his father. He said, "It's just that his father's brain hasn't been working well for the past 2 years. His hand hasn't even fully recovered yet, and he's already going back to work in the capital. He doesn't take good care of himself either. I'm afraid he'll get sick." Fong Tong Tong choked. "Oh, thank you for telling me. No way. Did he go out and mess around?" "Well, he raped that 1799. She's already in her 40s or 50s, and there are problems between us too. College. It's none of your business. Now that something like this happened, he's going to lose all his dignity." Was well aware of it. Mrs. Fong was a little sympathetic. It was like a substandard house. But Wang Jincheng is a pretty good guy. It looked like a tall building that was built on top of one another. His father's health is getting worse. The most important part was that the foundation was built very crudely. Hey. The slightest movement would cause the majestic building to shake. Fong Tong Tong felt goosebumps when they weren't paying attention. It would suddenly collapse. Are you planning to arrange a blind date with this guy? Yi Qianqian was currently seriously injured, but he just came back not long ago, and I haven't had the time to visit him. Was in a bad mood and said, "It would be awkward if he's not single. Why don't I treat you to a meal as an apology? If he's single, since he used to like you, you can ask him out to meet you. There's no need. You already know him, and there's some foundation." It seems to be on good terms with the girl who took care of Brother Shin for a few days and said in annoyance, "It's because he's close to the girl that we won't be able to get married." At the end of the day, he's the one who's at fault. I used to think that Yi Qianqian would never be able to find a boyfriend because she was even more unruly than you. I'm going back. In the end, goodbye. She's grown up and found a boyfriend who's so handsome and outstanding. Don't call me sister-in-law. Yi Qianqian interrupted Lao Zhou. I can't accept that. So what if he's outstanding? We've already broken up. They still broke up. With that, Yi Chan turned around and sat on the chair and lowered her head to turn on her phone. Lao Zhou looked at Yi Chan's slender and frail figure when she heard that. They couldn't say a single word. How is that possible? Lao Zhou watched Yi Chan's silhouette disappear into the corridor before he picked up his phone and called Shinjilia. Can't Yi Chan dump himself? The moment Shinjilia returned, he was scheduled to attend a few meetings in the hospital. It's up to you. After the meetings, a mother wants to get married, and a man wants to cheat. He was busy for many days without a break. That can't be. A doctor in the capital hospital suddenly got into a car accident. How could he cheat? There was no one to take care of the patients and a bunch of things under his care. Is so boorish and doesn't act like a girl at all. The hospitals in the capital were not like those in Kingstown. Why would a man covet her? They were short-staffed. It's only right at a faster pace. There were even more patients coming to the psychology department. Chan is a good person. The person in charge of the hospital applied to have Shinjilia transferred back. It's not when like you don't know her. Shinjilia had a girlfriend in Kingstown. How could she be cheated on? They thought it would take some effort. Mrs. Fong clapped her hands. They didn't expect Shinjilia to agree without hesitation. You have to scold that guy. While everyone was pleasantly surprised, they also handed everything over to him as a matter of course. How can you not be excited? It was 12:30 p.m. such a good girl. In Beijing. Aren't you worried that she has had been busy for most of the day? Fong Tong when he finally had a hot meal, he received a call from Lao Zhou. I was just joking. When he saw that it was Lao Zhou, look at how nervous you wasn't in a hurry. You treat her like your daughter, finished the but she chased your daughter out of her house. Before he picked up the phone and placed it on speaker. That? He picked up his spoon again and asked, of course it's true. Hello. Why else would I come back? Yeah, I just rested. Tong looked aggrieved. What's wrong? Forget it. Nothing. I just wanted to tell you that your woman came looking for you just now. If you believe Yi Chan, you can treat her like your daughter. Eating, and his chewing slowed down. As she spoke, she stood up and prepared to leave. She doesn't seem to know that you've been transferred back to the capital. Said anxiously. What? Did her boyfriend cheat on her and take it out on you? And she doesn't look very well. It's normal for him to be in a bad mood. Scratched his head and said, just give way and he'll be fine. Brother Shin. Since both of you aren't happy about breaking up, more aggrieved. Why did you still want to break up? She looked like she was on the verge of tears to make everyone choked out. You don't know anything at all. I got it. She chased me away because she thought I seduced her boyfriend. Mrs. Fong I can't talk pale with fright. I'm busy. How is that possible? I still have a bunch of things to do kind of person at all. I'm hanging up. Did Yi Chan really say Brother Shin, don't you think you're being too heartless? Chapter 1782. Mrs. Fong's expression darkened when she heard Chapter 1800. What do you mean? Lao Zhou Tell me everything. When he heard the busy tone on the other end of the phone, he felt that they were a little baffled. You don't believe me anyway. Now that the woman had come knocking on his door, wasn't it obvious what she was trying to say? What nonsense are you talking about? She wanted to get back together. You're my daughter. But now, tell me, the man was putting on airs. Fong Tong sobbed as she recounted the hung up the phone. He stopped eating and stared at his phone. You know that the doctor-patient actually went to the hospital to look for years. She changed a few small details, but the general content was still the same. But why didn't she call me? However, why didn't she even automatically ignore the words she said to Yi Chan that night? Shinjilia as well as the last phone call with Yi Chan. His thumb stroked the phone. That's it. And his emotions were a little complicated. After Yi Chan slapped old Shin. However, deep in his heart, there was an obvious and uncontrollable joy. But what does that have to do with me? An indescribable joy. I didn't do quietly ascending. Moreover, but he was also worried that his thoughts were just wishful thinking. How can I betray him? If he suddenly called her, would he be rejected again? Yi Chan is becoming more and more outrageous. Was a little nervous. Mom, before he could still have the chat records someone called out from outside. Look at Yi Chan's attitude toward me. Yes. Is this the attitude she would have toward a friend? Looked outside. To think that I treated her as my best friend. A petite young lady in her early 20s walked in with a lunchbox in her hand. She had a big smile on her face as she handed it to her mother. Shin, thank you for what you did just now. What Mrs. Fong didn't know was that the chat records I really wouldn't know what to do. Women like cleverly deleted a few sentences, next time, making it seem as if solve this kind of problem being aggressive. I can help you once, was furious, but I can't help you a second time. That's too much. I've seen many women like that. Then why did she call you? The key is that a young lady like your father told me carelessly, but now it seems that Yi Chan wants to settle the score with you. The young lady stuck out her tongue and said, that's why I didn't dare to turn my phone on. But you're really amazing. Mom, sobbed. You made that woman shut up with just a few words. I really admire you so much as a good friend, but I didn't expect her to treat me like this. He harumphed and turned his head away. She indiscriminately slandered me, he said, and even slandered her boyfriend. Finish your meal and get to work. Mom will avenge you. I'm serious. If Mrs. Fong could really raise admire Fong Tong to such a character, look at how capable she must be very capable herself. You're so handsome. She rolled up her sleeves and took the phone from Fong Tong Tong. The more the young lady spoke, when she opened the redder her face became, she saw a few more missed calls. Shinjilia had a look of disdain on his face. Old Shin called you. He lowered his head and ate. Mrs. Fong was a little surprised. He said, just keep the truth to yourself. Isn't Chan looking for you? I'll be proud if you say it out loud. The young lady immediately took her phone back and saw a missed call from old Shin and asked, Dr. Shin, I heard that you've broken up with your girlfriend. She subconsciously lifted the corners of her lips and called eyes at her in annoyance. Seeing this, Mrs. Fong those little rascals gossiping behind the scenes young man, isn't it? Fong Tong Tong was shocked and took a step trouble and spout nonsense. Mom, is that why when the young lady heard that you wronged her? The smile on her face faded a little. Mrs. Fong's words were sharp. She said, Fong Tong Tong's heart raced. Shinjilia looked up and said with a half smile, quickly. Why? And Shinjilia quickly picked up. Are you still hoping that I'll split it? Hello, old Shin. How can that be? Fong Tong Tong. You have to be happy yourself. Shinjilia's tone since you guys was a little harsh. Why did you change your phone's contacts? What exactly did you say to Chan Chan? Me. When he heard this, I didn't say anything to Chan Chan in the middle of eating and looked up at her if I want with a sharp look in his eyes. Chan Chan has to believe me. How did you know? Besides, hearing that's the truth. The girl looked a little guilty. What else can I say? Said, I accidentally saw it once. Sounded aggrieved. How did you see it? She subconsciously glanced at her mother put down his chopsticks and wiped his mouth with a piece of tissue. That night. Which night? You went through my phone. Shinjilia sensed that something was amiss. Your phone has a password. Who had that night with you? How could I find it? Explain yourself. Chapter 1783. Chapter 1801. It was that night. He couldn't stop asking questions. Didn't Chan Chan run out? A trace of embarrassment flashed across the girl's face. Gave a vague explanation. She said, I was just guessing. Don't be here. How can an ordinary person's phone not have a password? Is that so? Chan Chan ran out. And then the two of you face was full of suspicion. Tell me. Do you think I'll believe you? Mrs. Fong's voice wasn't soft, and Fong Tong Tong was nervous when she heard it. It's up to you whether you hung up the phone and said, Mom, the little girl stood up and wanted to leave with the lunchbox. Don't overthink it. Nothing. Shinjilia narrowed his eyes and said, stared at You're feeling guilty. Phone. The little girl's Why did you hang up the phone if you didn't? She turned her head and said somewhat angrily, Why are you so annoying? Didn't you like me just now, aren't you? Didn't you say that you admired me? Fong Tong Tong was about to explain when her phone rang again. You peeked at my phone. When she saw old Shin's name on the screen, tell me the truth. Fong Tong Tong covered her phone and said, Lin Miao stomped her foot and replied, It's none of your business. Oh no, I didn't. Go back to your work. It's just that the last time we were working overtime together, however, weren't you in the hospital? Fong Tong Tong ran out with her phone in her hand. I went back to the office first and saw that your cell phone was out of sight. I took a look at it and saw that the name on it was Yi Chan Chan who dumped me. Since she couldn't catch up to Yi Chan Chan, that's how I knew. She turned around and picked up the landline when he heard Yi Chan Chan. Shinjilia unlocked his phone and confirmed that her mother hadn't caught up to her. While he was looking at the record, he also saw other notes in it. She answered the phone. There were no changes, but there was no record of Yi Chan Chan calling. It's about that day. He placed the phone on the table. After Yi Chan Chan ran out, didn't you say that you had home to bandage up your wound? What about now? I went back to Yi Chan Chan's house. Lin Miao Miao lowered her head and said meekly, and neither did Chan Chan. How did you delete it? I called someone and accidentally let it slip. I'll use an AI robot. I said that the two of you might break up. An AI robot can delete it. If you didn't say it first, then Yi Chan Chan robots are very powerful. After all, you're a man, I'll give it a try. You've been slapped in public. As Shinjilia spoke, no one can stand it, he picked up his phone and pressed the middle button for a few seconds before saying, You're the most disgusting and troublesome person I've ever met. Lin Miao Miao's contact number. Shinjilia was so angry that he didn't bother to hide his anger. Her heart raced like thunder. What happens between me and Yi Chan Chan has nothing to do with you. I can't delete any contact information. I'll make things clear with you. Hearing this, regardless of whether or not Yi Chan Chan and I end up together, she was so embarrassed that she could die. I really, but in the end, really love Yi Chan Chan. She still stomped her foot and turned to look at Shinjilia. Even if Yi Chan Chan wanted my life right now, I wouldn't have anything to say. I'll tell you the truth. Before this incident, I treated you back in his chair and looked at Lin Meow Meow calmly. Now, I only treat you as a wishful-thinking mistress who only knows how to use underhanded means to destroy other people's relationships. Although I've only known you for a few days, every word was enunciated. I've heard a lot of legends about you before this. Shenjilia's tone was harsh. I really admire you, but every word was deadly. So I like to follow you around. Fong Tong Tong gripped her phone tighter and tighter as she gritted her teeth. 0126. However, his eyes had already turned red. Yes, she stared at the coarse walls in front of her almost buried in her neck. She opened her mouth to speak, was a little but dark, tears were already flowing from her eyes. Lin Meow Meow felt even more embarrassed. She said shyly, "You'll regret this. I heard that you were dumped and looked very sad." Fong Tong Tong was on the verge of crying out loud. "You're more emotional than before." However, and your mood managed to suppress the urge with her rationality. "So I think it must be this woman's fault." Naturally so knew how much damage his words would cause to a girl. The guilt in his heart gritted his teeth. However, if he didn't say those words now, Fong Tong Tong wouldn't be the only one who would be hurt in the future. Chapter 1802. There would be him and Yi Qian as well. Shenjilia's gaze deepened as he coldly said, his face not up to you to decide. "Do you know how much trouble you're causing me by doing this? Is really unlucky to have a best friend like you." Lin Meow Meow shrank back a little nervously and said, "In the future, I'll apply to have you transferred out of my office when we get married. I'll find another assistant." Shenjilia stood up and picked up his phone. 1784. "Get out." When she heard the busy tone from the other end of the phone, "I'm doing this for your own good." Fong Tong Tong suddenly felt as though all the energy in her body had been sucked out. Shenjilia's face was stern. His grip loosened, there was no mercy on his face. Fell to the ground. Lin Meow Meow had heard rumors about Shenjilia. Just by listening to the sound, that this man one could tell that it was a tragic end. Rarely got angry, but when he did, Fong Tong Tong stared at the ground. Could withstand it. She squatted down and Shenjilia looked like he was serious. She blinked her eyes hard, Lin Meow Meow and didn't dare to say anything formed more in her already dry eyes. She hugged her lunchbox and walked out dejectedly. She slowly lowered her head and walked in. Shenjilia called Yi Qian. Mrs. Fong was on the phone. She seemed to be busy with something, and it sounded like she was quarreling. No one picked up the phone for a long time. "Isn't Tong Tong good to you?" At that moment, Shenjilia was actually glad that Yi Qian and her boyfriend blacklisted him. "If it weren't for you, but why didn't she pick up her innocence?" When Yi Qian walked out responsibility by she found a random fast food restaurant nearby and bought something to eat. After eating, he rushed to the company and heard her mother's words. After about 10 minutes, she arrived at the office. There were many people on the subway. What did she mean by that? There were no seats. Why did it sound like Shenjilia had done something indescribable with her? Didn't look at her phone. When Mrs. Fong heard the voice coming from behind her, she picked up her phone and saw that there were 2 missed calls. She waved at her and said, "To think that you treated her as a good friend." When she saw the name, what does Yi Qian's heart mean by this? Beat. It hadn't been long, but as Mrs. Fong's palms were already she had already turned on the speaker. She hesitated to call back, but just as she was about to make the call, she called out, Yi Qian cut off the call. Fong Tong Tong. Shenjilia didn't call me at this time because his colleague at Kingstown Hospital told him that I went to look for him. Did he? You weren't like this in the past. What should I say? Yi Qian's going to the hospital to look for him was just an impulse. Unbearable. Now that she had calmed down, was about to say something, began to regret it. Yi Qian had already hung up. The overwhelming regret hit her. Mrs. Fong was furious when she looked at the phone and hesitated for a moment. In the end, she didn't call back. What does this woman mean? Just as Yi Qian was about to put her phone away, Fong Tong Tong was also fuming with rage. A melodious ringtone. The faint sense of guilt in his heart had completely vanished. When Yi Qian saw those I will be unjust, her limbs began to stiffen. Since you guys are going to break up, what should I say? Why don't you break up completely? After holding the phone for a while, felt that the events of the past few days had tormented her unbearably. Hello. The most disgusting thing was that she even felt disgusted by her own home. Although the tone of her voice had changed slightly over the phone, that night, in Shenjilia's ears, really had it was as melodious as a melody in her little nest. Yeah, I heard that you went to our hospital today. He didn't know which bed it was. Shenjilia's tone was calm, and he pretended that nothing had happened. Just then, his phone felt a little awkward. It was Shenjilia. She felt extremely embarrassed at that moment. Yi Qian only glanced at it before turning the phone to silent mode and putting it aside. I've been feeling a little uncomfortable recently, had just come downstairs so I went to the hospital to have a checkup. Extremely troubled expression. She happened to pass by the psychology department and thought that I hadn't glanced you for a long time before her eyes so I wanted to say on her stomach. I see. Time really flies. Shinjilia was a little disappointed. Into your stomach? Yi Chan-chan's heart raced as she replied, yeah. Go. It's a real baby. Why did you suddenly go back to the capital? Feel it. It was transferred by the hospital. Yu grabbed her hand and gently stroked her belly. Something happened in the capital and we are short of manpower. Big now, so the hospital specially arranged a small assistant. It should start moving. So busy. So fast. Yi Chan-chan's heart skipped a beat. The child can be born after more than 9 months of pregnancy. Your assistant is also a doctor, right? At that time, yes, don't let her see was an intern, sad face. But she's gone now. When she heard that, the corners of her mouth twitched and she replied, I've just fallen out of love. Chapter 1803. Oh. Chapter 1785. It seems like you're quite lucky with women. Remember, Yi Chan-chan was always held the phone in her hand and sat in her seat. She had always been optimistic. Her tone was a little ambiguous. Yu rarely saw Yi Chan-chan her half-joking so troubled. Shinjilia's previously depressed shook her head without hesitation. He chuckled and asked, what's wrong? I don't want to see him. Are you jealous? Why? Of course. If there's something, it's better to talk it out. If I had a beautiful woman by my side like you, the most important thing for a husband and wife is to be honest. That's true. No matter what kind of misunderstanding you have, you're so happy now. It'll be fine as long as you talk it out. Something happened in my family recently. She caressed her stomach. Do you know about it? Yi Chan-chan looked at Yu and felt a little envious. My grandfather passed away. Yu was a woman who was as gentle as water. Shinjilia had brought a lot of Alzheimer's medicine for his grandfather. Meticulous, understanding, and patient. Those things had been thrown away by Yi. Any man would like a woman like Yu. Shinjilia was silent for a moment before he said, it was really terrible. I heard about it. Thinking of that, Yi Chan-chan would be the first to suspect Yi Chan-chan. She said, in other words, Shinjilia might have known about it a long time ago. We're not husband and wife, but he was stingy with his condolences. We just broke up. Yi Chan-chan felt uncomfortable when she thought about it. You can lie to me about that, Shinjilia quickly said. Your sister said you were very sad. Held her hand, but I was afraid that you would be even sadder if it was only a matter of time before the two of you got married. No, Yi Chan-chan found it a little funny. Her lips curled up. Do you know But I didn't expect you to be so self-aware. Of course I know her. You're right. She was my bridesmaid at my wedding. If I heard your voice at that time, I would indeed be very sad. Yu looked at Yi Chan-chan. Shinjilia had expected it, but he's still been staying at your place for the past few days, right? But Yi Chan-chan's does this matter have anything to do with her? Shinjilia really held the phone in his hand and remained silent. Yu didn't know why I'm quite happy to hear your voice now. Suddenly changed the topic. After Shinjilia's heart beat faster, but he still pretended to be calm and last after a long pause. You love him very much. Did you know that something happened to Fong Tong recently? I thought so. Shinjilia really didn't know, but I don't think so anymore. When he heard Yi Chan-chan's question, he became curious. If you love someone, what shouldn't you tolerate everything about them? This was almost an instinctive reaction. I thought I loved Shinjilia asked it. He felt that something was wrong. I thought I loved Shinjilia. If he asked that when I found out that the two of them felt something different about I didn't love anyone anymore. When he realized this, didn't expect Shinjilia immediately changed his tone and said, she couldn't help but widen her eyes if you don't want to tell me. I don't really want to know. The two of them had sex. Yi Chan-chan replied. Yi Chan-chan had expected such a reaction from her father. When Shinjilia heard this, said, his eyes widened in disbelief. Isn't it? No way. I think so too. When I heard about it, I was shocked too. If Shinjilia really got together with Fong Tong later, based on my understanding of him, she would definitely break up with you. That she fainted. It's impossible for him to keep calling you and begging you to change your mind like he is doing now. Yi Chan-chan's voice became softer. Said it was an accident. Shinjilia could imagine the expression on Yi Chan-chan's face right now. Indeed. After a moment of silence, had fallen in love with someone else, why did this happen? He would have broken up with Yi Chan-chan. This was probably retribution. However, if it was just an accident, believed in and the person Shinjilia liked the elders in her family would always tell her that people then it was understandable that things would turn out like this. Otherwise, bad luck would befall them one day. In the past, was infuriated. He had always felt that pitiful people were hateful. Treated them so well. Is this how they repay you? However, after what happened to Fong was already in a terrible mood. Yi Chan-chan couldn't bring herself to like that woman at all. She felt the urge to cry. If Fong Tong hadn't gone to her house that day, would such a thing have happened? She picked up the phone and dialed Shinjilia's number. Yi Chan-chan laughed bitterly. Chapter 1804. Do you think it's possible for him to admit it? Ever since Fong Tong was hospitalized, it's impossible. Yi Chan-chan had only seen her twice. Perhaps it's a misunderstanding. She was unwilling to meet Fong Tong. She didn't even offer her condolences. You believe after learning that Fong Tong Tong was fine, Yi Chan was immediately returned to Kingstown. What if she just wants you to break up? Sometimes, Yi Chan felt that her heart was cold and hard. What if she's already taken a liking to Shinjilia? Why didn't she offer any condolences and become your mistress? Fong Tong Tong after what happened to her after being a friend for so many years. These questions before. However, she couldn't bear to part with Shinjilia, a man whom she had known for less than a year, had been together for less than 3 months. How could she blabber about something like that? Every time she thought about how she had lost this man because of a few slanderous words, everyone knows that. Yi Chan felt as if her heart was being trying to ruin our relationship. How bad would her reputation be when she heard Shinjilia's question? Yi Chan replied, "But I don't think it's possible. This is fate." Shinjilia was speechless. Since he loves after a long silence, he wouldn't be entangled with another woman. What a pity. Shinjilia really felt that it was a pity. I've known Shinjilia for almost 20 years. He didn't have any other thoughts. I think I have some understanding of him. Yi Chan said softly. But he lied to me. Shinjilia was silent as he waited for her to reveal the truth. Let's meet up. From the time Shinjilia hid his injury from her to the time she exposed to suddenly relaxed, to the time Fong Tong Tong let slip, he felt as if he had explained everything clearly. No matter how big or small it was. Shinjilia pretended to be calm and asked. This was weekend, so stunned by what she heard that she had nothing to say. I've been on leave for too long recently. There were suspicious points everywhere. There are a lot of things to do. There were loopholes everywhere. I'll go to the capital to look for you on the weekend. With so many things Shinjilia had done. There's no need. It was difficult to convince others that he was innocent. Yi Chan's heart tightened when she heard that. She said nervously, "It's okay. I'll go to Kingstown. I think we should give him a chance to explain himself." Shinjilia's voice was gentle and cautious. "There's no need. Your time in the capital is too tight. Fortunately, we're not married yet. It's too tiring to travel back and forth in only 2 days. Who knows? This might be a good start. Is food and accommodation included?" Yi was indignant. "Yes, Yi Chan. You're just going to let it go like that. What else can I do?" Her colleagues looked over. Of course not. When they saw Yi Chan's blushing face, doesn't have a few ex-girlfriends suggestively. Can't you just treat it as if he's had an ex-girlfriend before? And her expression became even more forlorn. But Fong Tong Tong is my best friend since I was young. They were still some distance away from her. She's a good friend of mine. At least they couldn't hear her when she spoke. Even a rabbit doesn't eat the grass near its nest. She whispered into the phone. What does this mean? I recently learned how to cook curry rice. Fong Tong Tong's mother called me just now. She scolded me for ruining her daughter and bringing her to the front of a beast. And he replied in a soft and affectionate voice. Yi Chan almost burst into tears. I'm hanging up. She almost couldn't hold it in. Yi Chan hung up the phone and quickly pulled her into her arms. She looked at the string of numbers on the screen and decided to add a note to his name. Yi Chan wasn't the kind of person who would cry at the drop of a hat. He was my ex-boyfriend for the time being. She wiped her eyes and sniffled before saying, Shinjilia agreed to reconcile with her and they could let bygones be bygones, she would change her mind. You know how the mouths that had accumulated for so many days seemed to have been released. Dad and even the work became more energetic. Everyone in the town knows him. Sissy's name was famous in the art circle for being cold. The news of your grand marriage has probably spread all over the world. But now that something like this has happened, to be in a I'm really afraid that if I go back to the town, not only did she talk a lot, by the people in the town, but she even sent a love pack. This made the painters feel extremely flattered. You're the mistress. At the same time, they immediately started to reflect on themselves. Why are you acting as though you owe them something? Did they do anything wrong to make this guy start to set up a trap for them? What will I do in the future? Was speechless. The work accumulated over the past few days wasn't something that could be done easily. There will be retribution. As expected, those words kept worked overtime until 9 p.m. today. After dinner, Yi Chan slept at Yi Yu's side. Yi Chan was Yi Yu's biological sister. When she didn't shy away and stayed in the guest exhausted. Although when she opened the door, she found that the lights in the house were on. When he saw Yi Chan's heart skip a beat, he would say a few words, she felt her body tremble. It was daytime when she went out, so it was impossible for someone to forget to turn off the lights. When Yi Chan thought of Fong Tong Tong, she didn't dare to get close to be turned on at night. Days like that passed for 3 days in a row. She stood at the door and stared at the house. Yi Chan went to the office at 7 in the morning and got off work at 9 in the evening. However, there was no movement inside. She specially instructed the receptionist to tell Shinjilia that she had applied for leave or resigned if he came brace herself to walk in. The chief editor was very pleased and even praised Yi Chan during the meeting. It was the sound of the door opening. She was given the title of Best Employee and wasn't deducted from the full attendance award. That her whole body almost jumped up. In just a few days, she turned her head and saw a man standing behind her. The originally raised his eyebrows slightly suddenly became a hard-working person who went out early and came back late. Saw him, she was a little surprised. It was precisely because of this that Yi Qianqian's performance had achieved results that amazed everyone in just a few days. He was wearing a light blue top and beige shorts. 3 days was neither a long nor short time. His hair was half dry, but he looked very clean. She was busy every day, shower gel afraid that if she stopped, she would think of Shenjilia. Looking at Yi Qianqian's face, Shenjilia walked over. As for herself, she could only stay at her sister's house and seek comfort. She looked at him and blinked. However, she didn't expect that even though he stood in front of her for a moment and stared into her eyes, she would still be stopped at the entrance of the office. His gaze moved away from her eyes. It was already 10 o'clock when she got off work. Yi Qianqian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Carried her bag and walked downstairs. What is he going to do? She was about to hail a cab when she suddenly felt a grip on her arm. Yi Qianqian's face became hot, and her bare face began to redden at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's me. However, Shenjilia's voice only lingered on her face for a while. Down. Then, however, he turned around and unintentionally muttered, "You didn't even close the door." They hadn't seen each other for a few days. He had already walked to the door. Looked very tired. Yi Qianqian felt a little embarrassed under his eyes, and her face became even redder. Were a little thin. She clenched her fists in anger, glanced at her hand that was being held and frowned in resistance. She shouted, she twisted "Why are you here?" in disgust. What do you want? There was no sound behind her. I just want to tell you that I'm moving away. When Yi Qianqian turned around angrily, I won't bother you anymore. Bumped into a wall of flesh. Shenjilia loosened his grip. Shenjilia's body didn't move. I finished moving everything. Just as Yi Qianqian was about to added retreat, a fish tank. Shenjilia suddenly reached out and wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly against his favorite tropical fish in it. Yi Qianqian felt as if her heart had skipped the rest of the day. She almost forgot to breathe. Felt as if her chest had been hammered by a hammer. As he stared at Shenjilia's light blue top, felt a little suffocated. That's your house. Didn't you ask me to come? It's your home. Are you trying to play dumb now? I'm just lodging here. Shenjilia lowered his head and looked at Yi Qianqian's pink face. Shenjilia smiled. His eyes darkened. In the future, take good care of yourself. Without waiting for Yi Qianqian to finish her sentence, Shenjilia suddenly closed and her eyes between them and stared at Yi Qianqian with his amber eyes. She lowered her head, not daring to look at him. Yi Qianqian couldn't say anything else. Qianqian, I've never done anything to let you down. And her heart was beating incredibly fast. I'm doing it now, and I'll be doing it in the future. Shenjilia gazed deeply into her eyes. This wasn't the first time he had gotten so close. I'll wait for you to come back. But why was he so nervous? Yi Qianqian gripped the strap of her bag felt like she was going crazy. But when she looked at Shenjilia, she couldn't help but want to get closer to him. Why did she feel so sad when Shenjilia stood on her tiptoes and kissed his lips? Hadn't she been hiding and running away for so long? It was like a dragonfly she was afraid that he would pester her. But it was enough to arouse a certain man who had been restless for a long time. She felt empty in her heart. The impulse that he had been restraining for a long time immediately surged out under this gentle kiss. It had only been a few days since he last saw her, but Shenjilia could clearly feel that she had lost a lot of weight. Her complexion wasn't very good either. Her petite and exquisite body seemed even more frail than before. Without warning, her mouth was attacked, and it was getting colder. Shenjilia's passion seemed to be even more ferocious short skirt that he had never seen before. Under such intense pressure, it looked very thin, almost couldn't breathe. In the past, Shenjilia would have carried her over and scolded her while warming her up. Shenjilia immediately moved away from her lips. He would have carried her home and tucked her into her neckline. But he couldn't do that cried out in surprise and immediately covered her chest. But in the end, Shenjilia had already reached out his claws and forced herself to calm down. Shenjilia lifted the hem of her shirt and reached his hand inside. Goodbye. She turned around, and suddenly, a cold wind her body over. She felt so nervous that she was about to suffocate. Shenjilia's throat seen each other for so uncomfortable. Was it really appropriate for them to be squeezed by a hand as soon as they arrived? He wanted to go forward, but his rationality stopped him. Besides, didn't they break up? In the end, he couldn't help if they were to go to bed at such a time. What kind of relationship did they have? Stopped in her tracks and straightened her body. Yi Qianqian had hundreds of concerns in her heart, and forced herself to be calm. When the words came to her mouth, "What's the matter? I haven't showered
I
yet.
really love you.
Shinjilia laughed out loud.
Shinjilia's voice was a little low.
He pressed his whole body against hers and said in a low voice,
felt the cold
I don't
wind,
mind. But his faint words fell clearly into her ears.
Yi Qianqian
didn't even have a chance to struggle before she was pressed down by him and stripped of all her clothes. They hadn't seen each other for more than 10 days. Forward. They hadn't lived together from the opposite direction. Shinjilia couldn't stand it anymore. Now
She
that the
didn't
little
dare to
sheep
look
was
back
in
at him
front of
again.
him, how could the big
Some
wild
people
wolf
and some
not eat
things,
her? Once left behind,
Shinjilia
would be
wrapped her up
inextricably
and carried her
entangled
into
in
the
a
room.
frenzy. Yi
So be
Qianqian
it.
felt like she was floating.
Once was enough for a bloody
After
betrayal.
she was placed on the bed,
When she returned home,
pressed down
Yi
on her.
Qianqian opened the door
Before
and
she
saw
could
a
react,
beautiful bathtub.
she felt her body swell.
It was rectangular and
the
lit
feeling
with
of beautiful
beam-filled made Yi
incandescent lights.
Qianqian almost cry out.
There were tropical fish the
Yi
size of
Qianqian
2
opened her
fingers
blurry
swimming in
eyes
it.
and looked at
The
Shinjilia
green
in
kelp
front of her.
slowly floated with the waves.
She gasped
and
and
the dark
asked,
red
"Is
coral
it
opened
too
and
fast?"
closed. It was beautiful.
Shinjilia leaned over
Everything
her and
was
whispered
how she
into
had
her
imagined
ear,
it to
"I
be.
won't."
But
With
her
a
heart
wicked
felt
smile,
as if it had been stabbed
Shinjilia
several
pressed
times.
his lips against hers and whispered,
Tears flowed
"You're uncontrollably.
uncontrollably.
I
Yi
really love
Qianqian's
you."
heart sank.
Yi
CK
Qianqian's
your
face
true love
turned even redder.
I don't care.
She pinched his hand.
Yi Qianqian squatted
Shinjilia
down,
had an even
curled
better
up on
way
the
to
ground,
punish her,
and burst into tears.
He pressed down on her heavily.
She didn't know how much time had passed before she finally got up. She wiped away her tears
and hugged his
took
back.
a shower, and lay down on the
Shinjilia
bed.
sealed her lips with
Go
his.
to sleep.
Wordlessly,
When he woke up,
he began
tomorrow
to move
was
with
a
all
new
his
day.
might.
In
When
the
it was
morning,
almost
Yi
over,
Qianqian was woken up by a
panted
phone
heavily
call.
and stuttered.
What?
It was the
Kind
landline
of
at home.
relationship do we
Yi
have?
Qianqian got up and lazily
Shinjilia
picked up
didn't
the
say a
phone in
word.
her slippers.
He quickly
Hello.
pushed her to the highest heaven once again.
Are you awake?
Finally,
It
he
was
sank
Yi
down
Jianhua.
heavily and asked in a
I
hoarse
just
voice,
woke up.
What do you think?
Today is the weekend,
I think,
so I
she
planned
felt
to
that they
sleep
were
a little longer.
embarrassed.
Oh,
They had clearly
oh.
broken up, and they
By
hadn't
the
even
way,
officially
do you
gotten
know
back
about
together
Fang
yet,
Tongtong's
but they had
return to
already
Yuntown?
rolled into bed together.
When she heard Fang
What was
Tongtong's
this?
name, Yi
Didn't
Qianqian's
we already break
drowsiness
up?
disappeared. She focused her gaze
You're
and
not
calmly
my boyfriend
replied,
anymore,
Yeah.
so...
Isn't
I
it
heard
bad
that you
for us
broke
to
up
be
with
like
Shin.
this? How did you know?
Shinjilia wasn't in a hurry
Looks like
to
it's
leave.
true.
Yi
Instead,
Jianhua
he
sighed.
embraced her and kissed her gently
I didn't
on the
expect
lips.
little Shin to be such an
In a
honest
soft
person.
voice, he said,
I didn't
"You're not
expect
young
him to be
anymore.
such a person behind the
Do
scenes.
you want to consider getting a husband?"
No matter what,
Yi
Tong
Qianqian
Tong
was
is your
exhausted,
friend. But when she heard his
Great.
words,
Now
she
she's immediately
immediately
friend.
felt energized.
Yi Qianqian
She
was
opened her
silent.
eyes and looked at him.
After a while,
Her
she
mood
asked,
seemed to have been
"Dad,
refreshed.
what do you know?
It's okay
What
if
do I
he's not
know?
your boyfriend.
It's almost
He
spread
can be your
throughout
husband,
the town.
the father of your child.
They're saying that
and
your
the head of your
boyfriend
family
raped
in the
Fang
future.
Tong Tong
and ruined her chastity. How could he do such a thing?
Yi Qianqian
Chapter
widened her eyes
1807.
when she heard that.
Shinjilia
Wan
gazed
Lily,
at her
your
and
man
raised his
cheated.
eyebrows slightly.
What are you going to do?
Yi Qianqian stared at him and asked, Are you proposing? Chapter 1789.
What do I
Shinjilia
know?
was very sure. It's almost spread
His
throughout
lips
the town.
tightened as he slowly and
They're
confidently
saying that your
said,
boyfriend
"This is
raped
the last
Fang
time."
Tong and ruined her
What
chastity.
he meant was that if Yi Qianqian
How could he
didn't
do
agree,
such a thing?
he wouldn't bring it up again.
Yi Qianqian's eyes
Or
widened
perhaps
when she heard
what
that.
Shinjilia meant was that right
What?
now, at this very
Yi
moment,
Qianqian
he
couldn't
wanted
believe
to end
it.
things with her.
Old Shin raped
Either
Fang
forever
Tong
together,
or not together at all.
How is
Yi
that possible?
Qianqian wrapped her arms
Yi
around his
Jianhua
neck and
clapped
kissed
his
him on the
hands
lips.
when he heard that.
She asked,
That's right.
What about your ring?
How is that possible?
When Shinjilia heard that,
Shin
the
is a
tightened
very
line on
upright
his lips
person.
finally relaxed.
How could he do such a
When
thing?
he saw that Yi Qianqian's
Exactly.
complexion looked much better,
Yi
he
Qianqian
smiled
held
and
her
reached out to
forehead.
touch the top of her head.
She was both angry
Yi
and
Qianqian
amused.
shrank back a little.
At the same time,
Then,
she was
as
filled
if
with
by
anger.
magic, Shinjilia
Who said
took out a
that?
velvet box.
Yi
Yi Qianqian widened her eyes
Today,
in disbelief.
I finally know what it means
She
to
just
spread
casually
falsehoods.
mentioned it.
Not only
She didn't
that,
expect
but
this
they
guy
also
to have
said
already
that you're a
prepared
bad
it.
person.
Shinjilia
They said
pulled
that you
himself
brought
up,
Fang Tong
and the
Tong
feeling
into
of
the
being
tiger's
filled
den,
disappeared,
causing
in an
her to
instant.
lose her chastity and
Yi
chastity.
Qianqian felt her whole
You
body
even
tremble.
stirred up a lot of unhappiness.
She put her legs down and shrank
Now
back.
she's staying at home.
Shinjilia
Her mother
grabbed her
talks
left
to
hand
everyone
and
she
stuck the
sees.
ring onto her ring finger.
She scolds you very harshly.
That's settled then.
I couldn't
Come
stand
with
it
me to
anymore,
the capital
so
this
I argued
weekend.
with her once.
Today was
Yi
Wednesday.
Jianhua's voice grew angrier
There were
as he
only
spoke.
2 days left.
How can there be
However,
such a person
Yi
in this
Qianqian's
world?
focus wasn't on that.
I used to think that their family
Instead,
was pretty good,
she was
but
looking
now
at the
it's
diamond
like
ring
this.
on her finger. Why doesn't she say that her daughter seduced my future son-in-law? It sparkled brightly and dazzled Yi Qianqian's eyes. If Fang Tongtong wasn't willing to be with him, Shen wouldn't have been able to do anything to her. With hers, and his gaze fell on her fingers. Bitterly when she heard that. Yi Qianqian smiled and nodded. I like it. No matter what, a smile appeared on Shenjilia's face after what happened. There's one more. This kind of man is fickle. He picked up the box and saw a man's ring inside, but tomorrow it might be someone else. Help me put it on. It's better to break up. Picked up the ring and looked at Shenjilia's outstretched hand. It's just a pity. She clasped the ring on his ring finger and asked, "When did you buy this?" He's good-looking, hardworking, very eloquent, and well-educated. As long as you nod, I can take it out that Shen would do something like this. Shenjilia looked at his hand with satisfaction, and the smile on his face widened. I think it's unbelievable too. Yi Qianqian suddenly felt guilty. If you don't have anything going on this weekend, she had rejected him so many times. Your grandfather isn't in good health. Remained in the same spot. Recently, he's been on a four-drip. He was still at the same spot. I didn't tell you because you're busy with work. Fortunately, he didn't go far. Yi Zhenhua's voice was slow and gentle. He gave himself one last chance. Grandfather might be here in the next 2 days. She crawled up and hugged him. Come back to see him. Thank you. He misses you very much. Why do you have to be so nice to me? Yi Qianqian's eyes reddened, and Shenjilia asked. Yeah. Shenjilia ever since Grandma passed away, Grandpa's health had not been very good. Whispered, "You're worth it." 2 years of dementia had been simple and clear. It was rare for Shenjilia to say something like that. Condition. Yi Qianqian felt like laughing and crying at the same time. It would be hard to avoid some gossip. Yi Qianqian hugged him tighter and sobbed softly. Yi Qianqian gave Yi a call. She said, "I'm sorry. Over the past few days, I didn't trust you at all. Fang Tongtong had become the talk of the town. I thought everything Fang Tongtong said was true. The people that the townspeople talked about the most were those with bright futures. Old Shen. This was the first time that everyone was talking about him." Fang Tongtong felt that she was extremely pushed her away and looked at her with a dark expression. She had used her mother's mouth to vilify Yi Qianqian for the past few days. She told me that what happened that night with you was just an accident. Almost everyone in town knew that Yi Qianqian had betrayed her friend for the sake of glory. Shenjilia's face darkened. In order to break up, she had pushed Yi Qianqian to Shenjilia and then dumped her man. She grew up with me. It was also the first time Fang Tongtong realized how terrifying the term, spreading rumors, could be. Verbal violence was far more unbearable than a direct physical attack. Yi Qianqian felt guilty and lowered her head, not daring to look at him. When Fang Tongtong heard her mother's words, that he gritted his teeth and said, "You're going to piss me off." She looked at her mother in disbelief and asked, "Men, why did she come back? Aren't they animals that think with their lower bodies? Isn't she waiting to be criticized for coming back at this time? Figure is better than mine. Her breasts are bigger than mine. Her hair is longer than mine, and her legs are longer than mine. Yi Qianqian came back to settle scores with me. Don't you men like virgins?" *T. Yi Qianqian tried to defend herself, Lady Fang's but she realized that what she said made she even wants to settle accounts with you. Bah! You should be thankful that I didn't settle accounts with her. Shenjilia really wanted to poke her head out to see what was inside. Would such a thing have happened? Why should I take responsibility for your best friend's virginity? Mom, not to mention that I've never touched her, felt even a little embarrassed. You're the one who invited the wolf into the house. You clearly knew that wasn't the case. You know that your man is infinitely charming, everyone is talking about us. Yet you still dared to bring another woman to me. If that's the case, aren't you digging a hole for yourself? Yi Qianqian rolled her eyes at him. Fang Tongtong felt a little embarrassed. Fang Tongtong hasn't seen the world yet. What do you know? Shenjilia said in annoyance and pointed a finger at Fang Tongtong's head. Shenjilia realized a little that the topic had gone astray, so he quickly to live up to her expectations. Where did you get that idea from? If I didn't say that, would this matter have blown up? Do you think all men like to be single? Don't you like that guy? Ah. If this matter didn't blow up, normal men think, would you still be with him? Yi Qianqian would he have broken up with Yi Qianqian wide open? But even if you really thought so, up to this point, my reputation will still be in tatters. Of virgins. The more Fang Tongtong thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. He suppressed his anger and said, "You really don't understand. Why do I have a mother like you? The kind of men you're talking about are pointing fingers at me the moment I step out of the house. Only scumbags like to break women's virginity. Even if this matter wasn't true, it's like collecting stamps. I'm a good man. Mom is doing this for your own good. When you say a virgin, did Yi Qianqian break up with that man? There's nothing special about it." Fang Tongtong nodded her head. Do you really think so? Her eyes were slightly red. Yi Qian turned away. Call that man and ask him. The more she listened, the more now that everyone knows about the two of you, in reality, what he wants to do. Yi Qian was the one who trusted Fang Tong heard that more. She pursed her lips. It had nothing to do with whether he was a man or not, but she still nodded her head. Their relationship had been maintained for more than 10 years. It was drizzling, after such a long and the wind was strong. It had almost become a habit. It made people feel tired unthinkingly and instinctively believe. It was rare for Yi Qian to come home and see so many people in the yard enough, but that she trusted Fang Tong too much. Yi Yu and that was why such a situation had occurred. But now, they walked in quietly, he laughed dryly leaning against each other. Normal men don't think like you. The people who came and went were all relatives she hadn't seen in a low voice. Don't you know whether I'm normal or not? Some of them whispered to each other, blushed, while others merely nodded and smiled before walking past her. It's not like I've ever had another man. Yi Qian knew that the only reason they were paying attention to her was because of the recent rumors. He lifted the blanket and covered himself with it. It was a rumor that was bad for him. Then, he wrapped his entire body around her and blind eye to it. I haven't had any other women either. She walked straight into her grandfather's room. We're even. His father was looking at his grandfather. You're too heavy. The old man was lying on the bed. Between husband and wife is built by pressure. His hair was snow white, and his eyes were deeply sunken. How are you going to nurture your relationship? He looked a little scary. But his eyes were still kind. I'm so sleepy. When he saw Yi Qian didn't give her a chance to speak. He called out in a hoarse voice. He grabbed her roughly and started a new round of war with her. Eyes reddened. Yi Qian stepped forward and took the old man's withered hand from Yi Zhenhua's and called out and shouted, Grandpa, condom, once I'm pregnant, followed behind and walked forward as well. No. She didn't have any feelings and having children is a matter of course. But at this time, she still felt a little sad. You've already worn the ring, and now you want to go back on your words. When the old man saw Yi Yu, he tried his best to smile and called out, It's too late. Tears welled up in her eyes. Shenjilia pushed against her and filled her up. Grandpa still remembers me. From the moment you nodded, you can't go back on your words anymore. Chapter 1791. What will happen if I go back on my words? Walked forward and looked at the old man as he gently squatted down. Grandpa, I'm Xiao Nan. I'm Yuyu's husband, Chapter 1809. Your grandson-in-law. Don't worry. Yi Qian lowered her head to look at the man in front of her. A soft moan came from her throat, sincere and powerful. All her words were drowned out by his overwhelming dialect of Yuntown. The next day, didn't know if Yi Zhenhua's alarm clock rang, but every word felt that she hadn't slept for long. Yi Zhenhua turned over in a daze and suddenly felt that something was wrong with her body. With a smile. She suddenly woke up with a start. Very spirited. She turned her head to look at her side and suddenly realized that it was Shenjilia that were different from those of an ordinary person. Back. He looked at Yi Qian and patted her hand as she said, Qian. When he saw her horrified expression, he reached out and hugged her. Don't care what outsiders say. Good morning. You're my good granddaughter. His lazy voice carried the faint huskiness of a man who hadn't woken up yet. She couldn't hold back her tears any longer. Skipped a beat. Grandpa, she blinked her eyes. Grandpa is most worried about you. Shenjilia held her in his arms and asked softly, who refuses to submit to others, and your mouth is unforgiving. Back and looked down. There are many things in this world that we both of their bodies were bare. You have to learn to avoid them. Time to get up and go to work, but your personality is just like your father's. Lie down a little longer. You can't be like this. Voice was calm. You have to change in the future. He rested his chin on her smooth shoulder and gently nodded her head. Yi Qian felt her skin itch from his caress. At the same time, she shrank her neck and pushed his face away. Grandpa's dementia over the years had made it difficult for him to recognize people. And kissed her lips. He was even a little muddle-headed. Yi Qian struggled for a while. However, it was rare to see someone so spirited that she couldn't articulate like this. She gave up. Zhenhua, Shenjilia reluctantly held her in his arms. Very spirited. After rubbing against her, he realized that he couldn't stop. For so long. And the person I'm most worried about, his body had already been contaminated with a body of fire. It's my regret that I didn't get to see her get married. That originally calm and tranquil body, Zhenhua, after a short while, impressively stood upright. Dad, don't worry. Yi Qian could clearly feel the change. Your mother is struggled with all her might. I'll make a move first. Shenjilia released her. When the old man said that, he looked at the top of the bed with a smile on his face. I'm going to work. Don't cry after I leave. Shenjilia was amused by Yi Qian's I'm with your grandmother again. He rested his head on one hand and made them want to cry, even holding her chest with a red face. At the same time, they couldn't help but look up at the top of the bed. It's not like I haven't seen it before. There was nothing up there. I've seen what I should have seen and done what I shouldn't have done. Eyes were filled with extreme affection. What's there to be shy about? Soon, the old man's face burned even more. He left. She felt uncomfortable looking at Shinjilia. The old man had lived a peaceful life. She whispered, he was just upright and friendly. Why did you suddenly come back? Dearly. Yes, even more I'm back. Now, Shinjilia lifted the blanket and was about to get out of bed. However, remember to prepare for the trip to the capital. The news of the old man's death spread very quickly in town. You're not coming with me. Yi Qianqian's grandfather was very prestigious with her eyes wide open. Coupled with Yi Zhenhua's fame, boldly it didn't take long for the news to spread. He didn't bother to cover himself at all. There was a big banyan tree at the most densely populated part of the town. When there was a small shop under the big banyan tree, he couldn't help but laugh. When Fong Tong-tong heard the passers-by talking about it, he slowly took out his clothes and said, "Before I'm going back to the capital now, there had been no news of the old man. There's still a lot of work to do." I skipped work yesterday afternoon when she heard someone mention that old Master Shin had left. No way. Was old Master Shin specifically waiting for Yi Qianqian? What do you think? At this moment, Mrs. Fong rushed back from outside. She felt that, after she had just been transferred to the capital, so there were bound to be a lot of things to do. Fong Tong-tong was baffled and asked since he had flown back from the imperial capital. He must have skipped a lot of procedures in the process. When heard that, she looked at Yi Qianqian and gritted her teeth. There would probably be a lot of things to settle. Yi Qianqian, don't go overboard. Before Yi Qianqian could figure it out, I know what kind of person you are, had already and you know what kind of person I am. Yi Qianqian took a step back when she saw his nakedness. Because I feel sorry for you. You have such a foul mouth. Pfft. Yi Qianqian burst out laughing. Yi Qianqian looked at him without saying a word. Are you with Shinjilia? When you said you wanted to meet me, I almost lost my mind. Chapter 1793. I still had 2 treatments to do. Since you insist on doing this, I still went to the airport without hesitation and booked the earliest flight to Kingstown. The truth and the lie were separated by a single thought. Yi Qianqian's heart palpitated. Yi Qianqian would never know that she was so close to finding out the truth of the matter. But she felt a little unfamiliar with him. Fong Tong-tong turned around and clenched her fist without looking back. Or rather, she quickly walked out. Would never be so emotional in the past. Yi Qianqian looked at Fong Tong-tong's back and found it ridiculous. What's wrong with me today? Fong Tong-tong. When I arrived in Kingstown, I didn't call you. And turned around to look at Yi Qianqian. I just waited in the house for you to get off work. Yi Qianqian's eyes were cold. You'll get your comeuppance. Gently stroked her chin. Fong Tong-tong was dismissive. Including when I made love to you last night. Thank you for your kind words. The 2 explicit words made Yi Qianqian feel like her whole body when she left Yi Qianqian's house. Her scalp went numb, and her face turned red. I'm not the only one that felt like I was raping you instead of making love to my own woman. If Yi Qianqian hadn't trusted Shinjilia enough, gently placed her hand on his waist to take advantage of the situation. Why would you have such thoughts? Most importantly, I didn't succeed in entering the relationship. Shinjilia held her hand and gazed at her with a pair of amber eyes. This could only mean that their love couldn't stand the test of time. I don't know what I mean to you, but I still took out the ring. From another perspective, this is the last time. Yi Qianqian and Shinjilia had to thank Fong Tong-tong. We'll be together forever. They thought that they could talk about marriage, what will happen but in reality, it couldn't stand the slightest bit of wind and rain. Shinjilia pinched her chin and leaned his face close to hers. At least they didn't have to stay together and torture each other. I'll never see you again. Was furious. Shinjilia gazed at her with a serious expression. The more she felt that she was right. Yi Qianqian's heart tightened, from Fong and a sense of nervousness followed. They had to pass through a small forest. This is really the last time. The small forest was a forest that was heavily cultivated in town. Stood on her tiptoes, and kissed him on the lips. The plants that were cultivated there were very precious. Let's get married. Fong Tong-tong was afraid that people would think that she was there to steal whatever time she passed and pushed her against the wall. However, this path was but be entangled with her. Although it was a little remote, the high-quality mattress was shaken by them for a long time before they stopped. It was raining that day, so the surroundings were late again, as expected. A gust of wind blew, and the surrounding stood at the door of the office with an ugly expression on her face and shivered from the wind. Yi Qianqian, she felt like she was freezing. Suddenly, you know what you've done. A strange sound came from behind. You should count how many times you've been late this month. Fong Tong-tong suddenly felt a little creeped out. Don't you know how many days of leave you've taken this month? She had just returned from Yi Qianqian's house. If you don't finish your work, how am I supposed to raise your bonus? There was a dead person in her house. You'll get your comeuppance. Didn't dare to speak. Yi Qianqian's sinister voice seemed to ring beside her ear. When the chief editor saw Yi Qianqian's behavior, she was filled with anger and said, Don't think
tell
that
me
you can
he's
be
already
willful
here.
just because you have the best
Fong
sales.
Tong Tong hugged her arm
There are
and was
plenty
about
of
to make a
people
run
with
for
good
it when a
sales.
huge force suddenly came
Don't
from
think
behind
that I can't
and
do
pulled her
anything
back.
to you just because you've fallen
Fong
out of
Tong
love.
Tong's eyes widened.
Yi Qianqian stuck
At the
out
same
her tongue
time,
and said,
she shrieked,
"Well, I got back together with him."
Before her
They've gotten
voice
back together.
could travel far,
The
Fong
editor
Tong
couldn't
Tong's
believe
mouth
it.
was covered.
Didn't you say
Fong
that they
Tong
broke
Tong's
up?
entire body was restrained by a huge force that came out of nowhere.
Yes, but we can
Her
still
body
get back
was suspended
together.
in the air.
You got back together
and Fong
with her
Tong
yourself.
Tong did not feel the slightest
Whoa.
sense of security.
He came looking for me
She
yesterday.
struggled with all her might,
Yi
but the
Qianqian
force seemed to
face
have
was
locked
a little
onto her
red.
and did not loosen at all.
She raised her head and glanced
Then
at the chief
he was
editor.
thrown to the ground.
The editor-in-chief saw the obvious hickey on her
take
neck
long
and
for
immediately
Fong
understood
Tong
what
Tong
had
to be
happened.
drenched in mud.
His expression
Before
darkened
Fong
even
Tong
further.
Tong could react,
So
she
you
caught
two
a glimpse of a
reconciled
dark
after having
shadow
sex.
pressing down on her.
Cough,
Help.
cough. Ah.
Fong Tong Tong struggled with all her might, but her mouth was covered by his
Chapter
hand.
1811.
She couldn't put up a
Yi
fight.
Qianqian
shuddered and hurried out of
Wifey,
the chief
I've been
editor's
looking for you
office
for a
without
long time.
hesitation. Why did
But
you
just
run
as
away
he was
with
about
someone
to
else?
step out,
He suddenly
I love
caught
you.
a glimpse of
I
the beautiful
really love
sparkling
you.
diamond ring on his finger.
Don't go with anyone else.
She immediately turned
Come
back
back with
and
me.
reached out her hand.
Ha.
I'm getting married soon. A middle-aged
Give
man's
me your
voice rang in
blessings.
her ears. The chief editor clenched her teeth and almost threw
Chapter
her phone at her.
1794.
Yi Qianqian quickly ducked and
where's
ran
your
away.
sister?
The chief editor
voice
retracted
could
her
be heard.
hand and made the call angrily.
It sounded
a little anxious.
When the call went through,
Yi
she changed
Qianqian
her
was
expression
sleeping
and said
soundly
pitifully,
inside.
"Hubby,
She
please
hadn't
comfort
slept
me."
for long
When Yi
before she was
Qianqian
woken
got
up.
home,
Shenjilia
she
was
squinted
already
her
gone.
eyes
and frowned as she
Yi
got up.
Qianqian tidied up everything
stretched
and lay
and
on the
yawned
bed
before saying,
she
"Peace with
couldn't
her
help
husband,"
but lift her ring again
They
and
should
wave
be
it in
out
front
for
of
a
her
walk
face.
at this hour. The corners of her lips curled up unconsciously.
Anan
is helping out outside.
Yi Qianqian
lay down.
Where did your
hummed a
sister
tune.
go?
She had been looking at it all day,
listlessly,
but she couldn't get enough of such
Feeling
beauty.
a little tired,
she called
she
out,
closed her
"What's
eyes.
wrong?"
Can't
She
you
could
just
almost
call and
imagine how
ask?
she would look in her wedding gown.
Someone outside is saying that
Beautiful,
a young girl
very
was
beautiful.
bullied by a crazy
It was the
man.
weekend, and the sun was
Oh,
scorching
look for
hot
her.
in Kingstown. Yi Zhenhua's
Yi
tone was
Qianqian
nervous.
packed 2 sets of clothes.
He hurried to find
bought
his
some
cell
Kingstown
phone
specialties and health
just
supplements,
as he was about to
and
make
set
the
off
call
for the capital.
Yi Yu's voice came
After
from
a
behind.
3-hour flight,
She
What's
arrived at the
wrong?
Capital International
Yi
Airport.
Yu
walked over. She called Shenjilia
Her belly
as soon
was
as she got
slightly
off the
bulging.
plane. She
It
looked
rang
very
a few
pregnant.
times
before Shenjilia
Li
picked up the
Jinan
phone.
was right behind Yi Yu.
It sounded a little noisy
Although
on the
he
other
couldn't
end.
understand what they were saying.
Hello,
he
I'm
could
off
tell
the
that
plane.
Yi Zhenhua
was very nervous.
Are you here?
He
Oh,
asked,
so
Dad,
fast.
were you looking for us? I'm still at the hospital.
Yi Zhenhua saw that Yi
I had to
Yu
rush
was
over
there
because
and
of
breathed
something.
a sigh of relief.
Why don't you take a
He
taxi
said,
to my hospital?
"It's good that you're here.
It's about 40
It's good that you're
kilometers from the
here.
airport, so you
You
should be
scared
able
me
to
to
get there
death.
in an hour. I knew it
Give
couldn't
me
be
a
your
call
daughter when you arrive. I know your daughter."
Yi
Qianqian was a little
That girl
disappointed,
isn't as tall
but
as your
she could
daughter,
imagine that
so
he
I didn't
was really
see her
busy.
face.
That
But
was why
she
he
was
couldn't
crying
pick her up
so
miserably. Yi Qianqian
Third
agreed
grand
and
uncle
walked
Yi
out on
came
her
over.
own.
He
She took a
seemed to be in
taxi
good
and headed to the
spirits,
address
but his
provided
small
by
eyes were
Shenjilia,
burning
with the flame of gossip,
Soon,
which made
she
people
arrived
feel
at a
like
hospital.
laughing. It
Yi
was still
Qianqian
Huxin pursed her
Hospital.
lips and asked, "Were
Yi
you scared by the
Qianqian
crazy
didn't call
man?"
Shenjilia.
If she could be
Instead,
mistaken with us,
she went straight
she
to the
should be
psychology
very old.
department.
How could
When
she
she
be
went
so
up,
useless?
the
people around her were very
How
busy.
could she be scared like this?
Almost no one saw her.
When third Uncle Yi heard
Yi
that,
Qianqian
he
pulled
looked at
her
her
small
with a
suitcase
"You're too
to the
naive"
information desk
expression
and
and
said to the
said,
nurse,
"Who told you
"Hello,
that she was scared?"
I'm looking for Shenjilia. She was bullied. Lin Miao Miao was in
As
the
he
middle of
spoke,
organizing
he
some
seemed to
documents
feel a
when she
little
looked up
ashamed.
and saw Yi Qianqian's
He
face.
whispered,
"In the woods,
with
on
one
that
look,
forest
she
path."
recognized the person as
She was
Shenjilia's
dragged
phone
in.
screensaver.
Don't you think she was
Lin
crying?
Miao
Miao immediately
Yi
felt
Yu
uncomfortable.
opened her
eyes and asked in
She
Mandarin.
looked at her with a
Could she
bad
have been?
attitude and
Third
said,
great uncle
"Director
turned his
Shen
head
is
away
busy.
with an unbearable expression.
You can
and
register
waved
with
his
him
hand.
first."
This
His
girl
tone
is
was
really
a little
impatient,
unlucky.
which made people very
Of all
uncomfortable.
people,
She just had to run
Yi
into that
Qianqian
lunatic. Hadn't expected the attitude of the people in the hospital to
Yi
be so
Qianqian's
bad.
curiosity was piqued.
Who's
I'm
the
not
lunatic?
here
Here
to
to see a doctor. There was a young
I'm
man
his
called Wang
girlfriend.
Jincheng. He was about the same age as
Lin
you.
Miao
Miao deliberately sized her
remember
up
him?
and said, "That's impossible."
That's him.
I've never
The
heard
one
of
who
Director
moved
Shen
here from
having
the
a
neighboring
girlfriend.
town.
Also,
He's my
how
classmate.
could Director Shen like you?
you. What's wrong? Recently,
It's
there
that
have been
father
many
of
people
hers.
pretending to be Director Shin's
His brain was
girlfriend.
broken by someone.
How did you
and
know
he would
him?
recognize anyone as
Yi
his wife.
Chan was infuriated.
I'm afraid this girl is
She
ruined.
could no longer keep up the pretense.
Yi Chan was shocked.
The image of a virtuous
His father
lady that she had been trying to
Isn't
maintain
that older than my
collapsed.
father?
With a dark
Almost,
expression,
but
she said, "How can
Alas,
you speak like
his
that?
mind is not clear.
Is it true that no one
Third
has
uncle
complained
waved
about
his
the
hand
hospital's
and said
information
sympathetically,
desk?
How pitiful. It's all fate. If you're unlucky, you can't blame anyone else."
Chapter 18:12.
Li Jinan didn't feel any regret.
Chan
Suppressed her temper and asked,
After
"Pester
all,
endlessly.
it had nothing to do with him.
How am I pestering you?"
Yi Chan
I
clicked
told
her
you to
tongue
leave
and shook her
but
head.
you're still here.
How tragic.
Isn't that
Yi
unreasonable?
Yu looked at him curiously
Lin
and
Miao
asked,
Miao looked
"You can understand
disdainful.
it?"
She
little.
lowered her head and pretended
Li
to mutter,
Jinan
"Why
hugged
are there
her.
all kinds of people in
After
this day
being
and
married
age?
for so long,
Each
it's not
one
for
is more
nothing.
shameless than the other."
Oh, that's
Yi
enough.
Chan's anger flared.
Stop showing off your love.
At that moment, a man
Yi
in a white
Chan
coat
waved
walked
her
out from
hand.
behind her. "I'll go help." Yi Chan glanced at him and looked at the name tag on the young
Chapter
girl's chest again.
1795.
She asked,
When Yi
"Your name
Chan
is
heard
Lin
that,
Miao Miao,
she
she stopped in her tracks and
That's
looked over.
me.
My
That
name is
person
Lin
was
Miao
an
Miao.
auntie who lived next door.
You want to file a complaint
She
against
was a
me,
nice
don't
person,
you?
but she was very
Go
gossipy.
ahead. Let's
Yi
see what you're going to do."
didn't have any special feelings
Is
for
the
this
attitude
auntie,
of the people
but
in
she
your
still had
hospital
to address
so
her
bad?
as auntie.
Why is the
Did
difference
something
between
happen to
Huxin
Fong
Hospital
Tong
in the capital and
Ever
Huxin
since Yi
Hospital in
Chan was young
Kingstown
so big,
Fong Tong was the
I
only
told you to
friend she
register
had in
if
this
you're
town
sick.
that was known to the others.
Aren't you annoying?
Although they weren't
You're
on
the
good
one
terms
who's
now,
sick.
they still had many
I
years
said
of
I'm here to
friendship.
look for Shinjilia.
The auntie looked at Yi Chan with
doesn't
an
want to
anxious
see
and
anyone.
regretful expression on her
Please.
face. Yi
She
Chan
said,
was
"Yes,
filled with anger.
yes."
She looked
Go
up
and
at
have
the
a
man
look.
behind her and said,
We've
"I'm
already sent her
Shinjilia's
to the
girlfriend."
hospital.
When
Yi
Lin Miao
Chan
was
saw Yi
shocked.
Chan
looking behind her,
What?
she immediately turned
How did
around.
this happen? Her
The
heart skipped
unfortunate
a
girl
beat.
they had been gossiping
The
about
man
for so
glanced at
long
Lin
was
Miao
actually
Miao,
Fong
but he
Tong
still
Tong.
walked up to Yi Chan
Fong
and said,
Tong was
"So,
bullied by a
it's
crazy
you,
man.
sister-in-law.
How could that be
Brother
possible?
Shin just told me to take you to his
Hey,
office.
of all the places this
Come
woman
with
could
me.
have gone, she just
Is
had
that
to take
so?
that small path." Yi Chan raised
Usually,
her eyebrows
no one would go
slightly.
there,
But when she
Her
walked there
gaze
today,
shifted to Lin
she
Miao
was
Miao.
bullied by that crazy
Since
Shinjilia
told
you, wouldn't the nurse
She
at
kept
the
bleeding
information
down
desk
there,
know
and
even
there were
more?
almost a few bowls of blood.
Yes, Director Shin just
As he
told us.
spoke,
He waved his
As he
fist in front of
spoke,
her. The man looked at Lin
His
Miao Miao
expression
and
was
said,
exaggerated,
"Didn't Director
and he
Shin
looked
just
very
tell you that
serious
his
as he
girlfriend would be
gestured.
coming and he asked you to treat
Everyone
her well?"
who saw it was trembling
"What's
with
wrong
fear.
with you now?"
Lin
Lin
Miao
Miao
exclaimed,
turned her
"Why
head
would
and
there be
said,
so much
"How do I
blood
know
when
if
it's
it's
normal?
real or fake?
Could it be?
If
Could
I
it
have
be?
to entertain
Yi
everyone who
Chan's
pretends
heart
to be
also
Director
skipped
Shin's
a beat.
girlfriend, won't I die
Could
of
it be
exhaustion?" That she had a miscarriage.
That's why you scold everyone who
It had
comes
only
looking
been
for
10 days
Shinjilia
since
for
Fong
being sick.
Tong and Shinjilia
You
got to
even
know
accused
each other.
them of being unreasonable
Could it
and
be
calling them ugly
that she
in a
was pregnant
roundabout
just
way.
like that? You even
No,
invert the
that
truth
wasn't
and pretend
right.
that you don't know anything.
How could a normal pregnancy
Do you have a
happen
grudge
so
against
quickly?
Shinjilia? Yi Chan felt that there was definitely something wrong without the slightest hint of
Her
politeness
brows
on her
knitted
face.
together tightly.
There's
You're
still
just
a
a
funeral
nurse
at the
home.
information desk. Don't run around.
Are you sure you won't get a
Yi
complaint if you treat a
frowned and
patient this
tugged at
way?
her. What
He
nonsense
said,
are you
"Isn't
talking
your
about?
relationship with her bad?
When did I do these
Don't
things?
go.
Don't
Her
accuse
mother
me.
is
unreasonable." The man was well
She
aware
might
of
even
this.
think that you're going to see her make
His
a fool of
expression
herself.
did not look too good as he
I'll
said,
go take a look.
"Lin Miao Miao, you're
I'll be
representing
back
the
soon."
entire hospital's image
Yi
by sitting
Chan
here."
flung Yi Zhenhua's hand
Don't you
away.
even want to protect the hospital's
She
image
went into the
now?
house to grab her bag
Dr.
and walked
Li,
out.
I didn't.
Dad,
You know
lend
very
me your
well
donkey.
whether I have it or not.
Don't go.
Yi Chan's
Don't get yourself
expression was
into
troubled.
trouble.
Yi Zhenhua disagreed.
If it doesn't
Yi
work,
Chan
I'll
went
just take a
straight
look
into
at
the
that
living
thing.
room to retrieve the car
As she
keys
spoke,
and dashed
Yi
out.
Chan
pointed at the thing
Miscarriage.
above her head. The
Lin
possibility
Miao
of a
Miao and
miscarriage
Dr.
in half a
Li
month
both
of
looked
pregnancy was not impossible.
It was a probe.
But when did they start to lose
Lin
so
Miao
much
Miao's
blood at this
expression
time?
changed.
Could it be that,
She said,
when they
"Are you
first
deliberately
met,
going
they already
against
had
me?"
an affair? You know very
No,
well who's
that's
going
impossible.
against whom. Young
Impossible.
lady, you're still young. Yi Chan
You
headed
must
in the
not have
direction
heard
of
of
the
this saying,
hospital, have you? It was quite a distance from her house to the hospital in town. It would take about 17 minutes to get there with the battery-powered car. Wait for me. After parking the car,
I'm going to get
Yi
changed.
Chan hurried over. All right, go ahead. Shinjilia propped himself up and took off his white coat as he walked walked inside. About 5 minutes later, Shanjilia walked out. After changing into a new set of clothes, he felt refreshed and comfortable. Chapter 18:14. When Yi Qianqian heard that, the nervousness that she had suppressed on the way over suddenly rose again. She asked, "Are we going to stay at your place?" "What else?" "I don't think that's a good idea. Isn't your family here? If not, where do you plan to live?" Shenjilia glanced at her from the side and said faintly, "Am I supposed to let my woman stay in a hotel when she's here to meet my parents?" When Yi Qianqian heard this, she suddenly felt powerless to refute it. Shenjilia held her in his arms and boldly walked forward. The doctors and nurses who came and went to greet her. They looked at Yi Qianqian as if she was a monster. The girls came forward to shake Yi Qianqian's hand. They all looked very surprised. "Oh my God, what a beautiful girl. Old Shen, is this your girlfriend?" "Ha ha ha, since old Shen is enlightened, his girlfriend is so beautiful." The praises were all half true and half false. Yi Qianqian saw through it but didn't say anything. She was happy to be praised like that. Yi Qianqian's lips curled into a smile. She looked at them and greeted them one by one. "Hello, everyone. My name is Yi Qianqian." "Wow, that's a nice name. Which she is it? Is it the she of hope?" "It's the west of east, west, south, north and south." "Isn't that character called she?" Yes, words with multiple pronunciations, ha ha ha." Yi Qianqian felt as if she had turned into a monkey. Even her face was stiff from all the smiling. She finally left the psychology department and headed down to the first floor. "You have too many colleagues," Yi Qianqian said as she rubbed her face and followed Shenjilia to the underground parking lot. "Why are you so familiar with everyone?" "I'm smiling so much that my face is sore." Shenjilia took out the keys and smiled. "Come on," he said. "You're still complaining. You don't know how happy you are." Yi Qianqian pouted and ran forward to hug his arm. "I didn't. But why are you so familiar with everyone? You're like a socialite." "That's right, you're a social butterfly. Otherwise, why would so many people praise you for your beauty?" Shenjilia walked in the direction of his car. The logo on the key was a Buick. It looked very low-key. Shenjilia placed the luggage in the trunk. Yi Qianqian opened the door and sat in the front passenger seat. She asked, "Is this car yours?" "It's my grandmother's." "Take it out and open it. Your grandma can drive. She's so good." "Of course, my grandma is very advanced. When she heard that you were coming today, she prepared a lot of things for you." Yi Qianqian became even more nervous when she heard that. She looked at Shenjilia and couldn't help but ask, "What is it?" "Food, entertainment, and a room. Tonight's activities have all been arranged for you." Shenjilia smiled. He seemed to be in a good mood. He glanced at Yi Qianqian and started the car. "When you see my grandmother, you'll definitely like her." Yi Qianqian didn't dare compliment him. Yi Qianqian knew very well what kind of person old Mrs. Shen was. When Yi Yuyu was still in the Shen family, she had been bullied by this old lady. Now that it was him, how big of a change could there be? With that thought in mind, Yi Qianqian became afraid again and said, "Shenjilia, why don't we go there tomorrow? After we're done, I'll go back to Kingstown." Chapter 18:15. In the future. "We'll talk about it in the future." Yi Qianqian's voice grew softer and softer. She looked at Shenjilia's expression and stuck out her tongue. "My sister married into your family. It's not like you don't know how your grandmother treated my sister. I think I should be more careful." When Shenjilia heard that, He felt both exasperated and amused. He retorted, "How can that be the same? My brother and your sister had an ill-fated relationship. With that kind of relationship, there's no way they could have gotten married. How can you compare our situation to that of my brother and your sister? Why not? By the way, if your grandmother finds out that I'm Yi Yu's older sister, will she have a problem with me?" "She won't," Shenjilia said as he drove steadily. "I've already spoken to Grandma. She knows who you are." "Really?" "Of course. Otherwise, did you think I would bring you back just like that?" Shenjilia was a little smug. He looked at the front of the car and slowly turned a corner. "My parents are both at home. They've been wanting to see you. Don't be nervous later. Just talk normally and act like you normally do. Don't be shy. My grandmother and mother are very playful. My father may be a little more serious, but he's also easier to get along with." "What about your brother?" "My brother isn't at home." "It's okay. Even if he's at home, you don't have to worry about him at all. He doesn't know you to begin with. Perhaps when he sees you, he'll only think that you resemble Yi Yu a little." "Ha ha. You really underestimate the relationship between me and your brother. I almost got into a fight with him. Have you forgotten?" Shenjilia finally remembered after being reminded by Yi Qianqian. It seemed that, when Shenmanting had first gone missing, the smell of gunpowder between Shenluo and Yi Qianqian had been quite strong. Although the matter had been resolved perfectly in the end, if the two of them were to meet now, it would definitely be a little awkward. Shenjilia smiled. "Can you beat him? This guy looks gentle and weak, but he's actually quite skilled. Can you beat him?" "Me?" Shenjilia laughed. "Of course I can. If I can't even beat him, wouldn't I be too weak? Then why did you say that he's skilled?" "Tisk. It's more than enough to deal with you. Why do you have to deal with me? If you want to deal with someone, deal with my man," Yi Qianqian said matter-of-factly. The smile on Shenjilia's face widened. He nodded his head and exclaimed, "You're finally enlightened. But I don't think I bought anything particularly good. Will your mom and grandma think my gift is shabby?" "What did you buy?" "I bought a set of skincare products for your mom. It's called Sea Blue Mystery or something. I don't really understand it, but I heard that mom uses it very well. I bought a ginseng for your grandma. My dad gave me the ginseng, and it's said to be 100-year-old ginseng. I also bought a bottle of wine for your dad. It's also made by my dad. He said it's 100-year-old wine." Shenjilia was surprised. He looked at her and asked, "Is that all you've packed in your suitcase?" "I also have a change of clothes. I didn't bring anything else." Chapter 18:16. I'm yours. Why do you still want a gift? Yi Qianqian said matter-of-factly. No. Fine. I'll collect it myself tonight, Shenjilia said casually. Shenjilia was in a good mood. After turning the corner, he stopped the car in front of a large villa. When Yi Qianqian heard that, her face immediately turned red. She glared at him and cursed in a low voice, "Pervert. What's wrong? What's in your head? You're calling me a pervert. I really don't know who's the pervert here." Shenjilia looked disgusted. He unbuckled his seatbelt and said, "Get out of the car." Yi Qianqian looked around. The surrounding environment was very comfortable. In front of her was the facade of a luxurious villa. It looked very comfortable. To be able to have a villa in a place like the capital, Yi Qianqian secretly clicked her tongue and asked, "Is this where you live?" "Yes." "What's wrong?" Shenjilia leaned over to help her unbuckle her seatbelt. As he asked, his eyes moved to her chest. Yi Qianqian was wearing a V-neck dress. The mint green color made the dress look especially fair. The collar was originally not low, but under the pressure of the seatbelt, the fullness of her breasts was squeezed up. It looked very alluring. Yi Qianqian didn't notice her collar at all. When she saw Shenjilia's gaze, she immediately covered her chest and pushed his face away. She scolded, "What are you looking at? You pervert." Shenjilia snorted and reached out. Yi Qianqian shrank back. Shenjilia immediately said, "Don't move. I'll help you tidy up." When she heard that, Yi Qianqian immediately stopped moving. Shenjilia reached his hand out and slid it directly into her collar. He gave it a gentle rub. Yi Qianqian exclaimed. Her cheeks immediately turned red. She shouted, "What are you doing?" "I'm helping you tidy up," Shenjilia said confidently. He suddenly opened his palm and took out a necklace. He gently placed it in front of Yi Qianqian. It was in the shape of a cherry blossom. The craftsmanship was very exquisite. Yi Qianqian was dazzled by the diamonds on it. When she saw it clearly, she blinked. Shenjilia was still in a very good mood. He said, "It doesn't look good to have a bare neck. I'll help you put it on." Yi Qianqian reached out and touched it. It was warm. She could tell that Shenjilia had been holding it in his palm for a long time. She giggled and said, "Can't you just give it to me? Am I not direct enough?" Shenjilia's cheeks were a little red, but he maintained a serious expression and said, "Here, I'll put it on for you." Yi Qianqian leaned over, and Shenjilia unbuttoned it and put it on. Yi Qianqian's skin was fairer. When she put on the rose gold necklace, Shenjilia felt that the woman in front of him was even more beautiful. Feeling pleased with himself, Shenjilia opened the car door and said, "Let's go." Yi Qianqian became even more nervous. When she saw Shenjilia get out of the car, she opened the door as well. Just as Shenjilia retrieved his luggage and was about to bring her in, Yi Qianqian sensed that someone was watching her. He looked around but couldn't find anyone. Old Mrs. Shen stood on the second floor. The curtains next to the floor-to-ceiling windows were lightly drawn, perfectly concealing the old lady's aged but spirited body. Chapter 1817. When Nanny heard the old lady's excited voice, she quickly put down her work and walked over to where the old lady was standing. He looked down and saw that the familiar car had indeed returned. Beside the car, Shenjilia held a suitcase in his hand. Beside him was a slender girl in a long dress. She looked like she had a good temperament. When Nanny saw that, she was elated and said, "Let's go down quickly. Haven't you been waiting for this for a long time? Let's go." Hey, I'm coming. You go down first. I have to take a look at the girl's face first. If she's not pretty, then forget it." The old lady held the binoculars and looked very excited. After staring for a long time, she finally saw the girl turn around. When she saw Yi Qianqian's face, the old lady finally slapped her thigh and exclaimed, "She's so pretty. I'll go down." Nanny hadn't seen Yi Qianqian's face, but when she saw the old lady's excitement, she quickly picked up the binoculars to take a look. With one look, she saw that the girl was wearing a mint green dress. She looked quite tall and fair, but her head happened to be turned around, so she couldn't see her face. Feeling helpless and regretful, Nanny had no choice but to go down. Yi Qianqian and Shenjilia lingered at the door for a while. After taking out the things that had been prepared for the elders from the suitcase, they walked inside. When they walked in, old Mrs. Shen happened to come down happily. Her eyes looked over. When she saw Yi Qianqian, she smiled kindly and said, "Oh, this must be Qianqian. You're so pretty." Yi Qianqian knew the old lady. Not only did she know her through Yi Yuyu, but she had also met her once or twice when she was in Kingstown. At that time, the old lady had been with Yu Lily the entire time. She was so focused on running away with Yu Lily that it was possible that she didn't remember Yi Qianqian at all. Yi Qianqian wasn't a person who liked to get close to people. She laughed and nodded her head. "Yes, Grandma. I've heard about you for a long time. Julia, that brat, has been hiding you like a secret. He's afraid that I'll eat you up." As the old lady spoke, she glared at Shenjilia with a pair of reproachful eyes. Then, she stepped forward and took Yi Qianqian's hand affectionately. She said, "I heard that you and Yi Yuyu are sisters. You look so much alike. But you have good luck. You are good-looking and have a plump face." "Oh, this is a blessed face." Old Mrs. Shen was elated. Come. Take a seat. Julia, pour some tea." Yi Qianqian was a little embarrassed by the compliment. She subconsciously glanced at Shenjilia. Shenjilia, on the other hand, was smiling. He seemed to be in a good mood. When he turned around, Nanny he had already served the tea. He studied Yi Qianqian's face and remarked, "They really look alike. They're practically carved from the same mold as Yuyu. They're like twins." Ahem. "We are twins, yes, but we are fraternal. She looks more like my father. Do you look more like your mother?" This was the first time Shenjilia had heard of it. Yi Qianqian shook her head. "I also look like my father." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.